Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your products and services, and hopefully parents will take advantage of everything that you have to offer because it's very much needed. I'm going to go through really quick and show what I offer through my tutoring business. So I'm going to share my screen. And after that, we get back to the questions. All righty, let's see. So at Diverse Interactive Learning Tutoring Center, we offer the following services online, on site, at the Math Center, and at local Lehigh Valley libraries. So we have over 90 tutoring sessions, different type of tutoring sessions, including classes for pre-K through adult level, or you can say college students, in a large variety of general, test prep, and specialty subjects. As far as products, we have educational books, which like alphabet, number tracing, Arabic, cursive writing, timetables, etc. We have a parent-free resource page that you can take advantage of, worksheets and the VAR learning style assessment. And we have Professor Parker. He has a video on there explaining his math channel and going through videos on that. So please take advantage of those free resources. When you subscribe, you will also get another free resource page. You will get our newsletter and you will get more. Now, the special programs that we have going on currently, an 8-week SAT Math Online Live Sunday prep class, April the 2nd, and then that's the class that I will be teaching. We also have a free program where you can get 2 free 30-minute tutoring sessions for math up to Algebra 2, physics, ASL, American, Sign Language, and Intro and Intermediate Arabic. If you're interested in those services, please contact me. I'm going to give you the contact information below. We have scored Diverse Interactive Learning 5 stars on Google, Facebook, and Bark.com. Now, these are our socials, and this is the website, Diverse iLearning, info@diverseilearning.com. Facebook and Instagram's the same at Diverse iLearning. Twitter at Diverse Learning, no I. And then I have 2 channels. I have Adrian's Life Advice, 7629, where I talk about my poetry book. I talk about bullying, deschooling, homeschooling, my various products in detail. And also I talk about helping your child get a free ride to college. And the other channel, Adrian and Sons Math Strategies, on that particular channel, my son and myself have done some math videos on multiplication strategies, division strategy, order of operation, exponents, and so on and so forth. So if you check that out, you'll see some really good math strategies. And then our number, 484-273-0195. Now, to learn more about the tutoring services, you can scan this QR code and it would lead you up to the tutor referral consultation questionnaire. You fill that out, we'll get back with you. And to learn more about the SAT class that I spoke about earlier, you can scan the QR code here to get information. And last but not least, to learn more about our educational books, you can scan this QR code so you can get that page and you can see the resources. And this is pretty much it. We have some other all the services are pretty much included, but you can know more about the services in detail if you contact us via one of the social media labels. Now, let's get back to the questions. Now, I want to talk about, the one I want to talk about is the school system. Now, we both worked in the school systems at, various times. And are you still working at the school system at this particular time?
Technically, no. I do some consulting work with certain schools, but I'm not a full-time classroom teacher like I used to be.
Okay. But it's good that we both have that insight into the classroom because, some people talk about the classroom, but they have not experienced the classroom. So we have actually experienced the classroom. I've taught in Baltimore and PA, like in the Allen Hall, like the Allentown area, and you taught in Philly. Did you teach in Baltimore also?
No, I never taught in Baltimore. I started teaching after I moved to Philadelphia after I finished college. So I've only taught in in different spaces in Baltimore, not Baltimore, in Philadelphia,
Okay. Okay.
charter
Yeah.
schools and traditional public.
Traditional. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I taught in charter and traditional public also. So I would like to know why do you think the public school system is lacking when it comes to math, and how does your program assist with that problem?
Well, there are multiple reasons why it's lacking when it comes to math. Like we talked about earlier in the program, that in every situation and the current type of society that we live in, there have to be winners and losers.
Mhm.
I know it's unpopular to say, it's uncomfortable for some people to hear that because they experience cognitive dissonance when they hear that. People don't like to hear it, but the reality is, and I do believe that we should live under different systems where everyone can be a winner. Those systems do exist, but
Mhm.
that's going to require a whole lot of work and a long and arduous process. But in the meantime, we live currently under a system where there have to be winners and losers. And in order to ensure that there will be a lot of losers in this current system so that the small amount of winners can continue to win, you have to keep people uneducated, undereducated, and miseducated, like Dr. Carter G. Woodson talked about in the miseducation of the Negro. So that has to be maintained. So the school system, and especially when we talk about charter schools, because I've had a lot of experience working in charter schools, and one of the things I thought about when because I began my career at charter schools, and
Mhm.
as it is with everything, nothing is all good and nothing is all bad. So you try to like identify like the positives and try to accentuate the positive aspects. But um, one of the things I thought about when I was early in my teaching career, and I wasn't as well versed in like the politics and the economics behind, education and education reform and things of that nature,
Mhm.
was I initially thought that charter schools were fully funded by philanthropic organizations, nonprofit corporations,
Mhm.
but then I found out that, well, actually, charter schools are funded by taxpayer dollars, just as public schools are. They may get some donations from,
Mhm.
corporations and whatnot. But I said to myself, I said, well, if the money's all coming from the same place, why not just why not just take the same money and improve the public schools? Since what ends up happening is these same students that are attending these charter schools where I'm teaching now
Mhm.
would have been otherwise attending these charter schools, would have been attending these local traditional public schools.
Okay.
I started thinking about that, and this is like back around like 2005, 2006, when I'm first like getting into the classroom, first like really starting to get my hands dirty and start doing this work. And then I started to understand that, as time went on, like, oh, this is just a money grab, So the reason overwhelmingly that, schools have to continue to do what they're doing in terms of maintaining low performance rates in mathematics, low proficiency in mathematics, is in order to maintain the status quo of the society. Because on the one hand, a lot of people from corporations and companies can talk about how they want, students and people to have critical thinking skills, but that's not true. That's basically as as students would say, that's all cat. Because if you have educated citizenry, and if you have a large amounts of people that do have critical thinking skills, then those people that are the few that control the resources, control land, control most of the wealth, they would be challenged, because people would know that number one, that they should be challenged, and they'd also know how to go about doing it effectively. So you
Mhm.
got to keep people unaware. You have to limit their ability to think critically, which we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
That's really one of the hidden benefits of mathematics. A lot of
Right.
people, young people especially, they don't understand that math isn't really as much about being able to just recite formulas from memory and even use the formulas. It's really about like training your brain
Right. To
in order
understand.
to think in a certain way, in
Mhm.
order to be a problem solver in a certain way. And so many of us are just not trained and equipped to be problem solvers. And we also think that there's status involved in not having to solve your own problems, or there's status involved with being able to take out your iPhone and just ask Siri something,
Mhm.
and as if it's cool to not be able to go know how to even go find that information on your own,
Right.
right? And what it does is it keeps those that are in power very comfortable and very safe.
Mhm.
So to your question, why the schools functioning the way they are, I think it's definitely by design. I don't think anything is coincidental or accidental, because it's not very difficult to solve the problem. So if the problem hasn't been solved, then we just know that, it's being done intentionally. But like, as I said, the challenge, like I mentioned Amos Wilson earlier, like the challenge is that you have to maintain the problem to your benefit, while at the same time giving the illusion and being convincing with giving the
Mm-hmm.
illusion that you're actually trying to solve the problem. So that's the delicate, like, balancing act that has to be done by those that, are the governmental entities, the corporate entities that claim to be
Mm-hmm.
so concerned about, changing these situations. So what I'm trying to do with my YouTube channel and with my own, like, tutoring, and my own consulting work, is to really, like, kind of put the power back into the hands of the community, back into the hands of the parents, the grandparents, the uncles, the
The
aunts,
families, right? Mm-hmm.
families, like the old heads on the block, the people, like, right in the community, to be able to understand mathematics, and then be able to teach the young people. Because if we don't, then the young people are going to grow up and become the shooters. They're going to be the thieves and the
Mm-hmm.
robbers, because that's going to be one of the only economic opportunities that they're going to see, because mathematics really is the gatekeeper toward any type of economic opportunity. So for everybody that's watching this, like, and this is how, this is how I look in the mirror, look at myself, and I hold myself to the same standard. If I don't teach people how to do math now, then if somebody robs me 10 years from now, 5 years from now, then
Mm-hmm.
it's my fault, because I allowed them to be ignorant, and I didn't do my part to try to change those things. And we
Right.
see what the schools are doing. So we can't wait for the schools to do it. We can't say, well, I don't have to do that. That's not my business. All I got to worry about is just my kids in my house.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all things being equal, it would be fine for parents to only be worried about their own kids in their house. But we know, as I said, all things being equal, we
Mm-hmm.
know everything is not equal. So because everything is not equal, every individual has to do more in order to ensure a certain type of future for all of our people. So that means you got to care about the child down the street. You got to care
Right.
about the child around the corner. You got to care about the child in another state or in another city. And
Mm-hmm.
you got to try to do something to benefit them. Or else, when the results of that, which is those limited economic opportunities, comes to your doorstep, or,
Yep, they will. They
the
will
person
come.
that's going to be victimized, it's inevitable at some point, in some kind of way, or somebody close to you will be. Then you can say, well, we have to start thinking, like, wow, like, that was my responsibility. I should have done something about that. And I know that's, like, difficult for a lot of people to wrap their head around, because of how we view personal responsibility.
Right. Instead of the
It's much
community.
easier. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
much easier to just say, well, the parents should be doing this, the parents should be doing that. And that's true. Parents should be doing certain things. But when you come to the realization that the parents aren't doing it, then what
Mm-mm.
you gonna do? You just gonna, like, just keep saying the parents should be doing this? Like, no, at some point you gotta step up. Like, in my community, like, I live down North Philly, and a lot of people throw trash, and there's a lot of litter. And I could say, well, people shouldn't be littering. And I can say that till I'm blue in the face. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not gonna stop people from littering.
Right.
So I can either get out there, get my little hand grabber, metal grabber,
Mm-hmm.
and get some plastic contractor trash bags, and get out there and clean the trash up myself,
Mm-hmm.
or I could just sit back and just complain and just wish that, like, people would stop littering. But I think the more realistic alternative is to be proactive. Like I said, roll your sleeves up and get your hands dirty and get to work. Because if I didn't do that, the trash would still be out there.
It would
No,
be.
like, nobody's coming to save us. Like, the city's not going to come do it, even if they should. And it's not about what people should do. It's
Right.
about what's actually going to end up happening.
Right. And if you true, and if you want to be the change, they say you be the change. If you want to change, you be the change. And a lot of people do wait on other people. We become dependent. Some parents do become dependent on the school system. How did my child get here? I thought the teacher was supposed to do this. I'm paying thousands of dollars for my child to go to private schools, and I'm realizing my child is on, like, my child is in high school, but they're on third grade level. How did this happen? So yes, it does take a village, and the teacher, is supposed to do their part, but there needs to be more things outside the classroom. It's not just about the classroom. The child needs to constantly be learning, whether they learning at home, whether they learning here. The child needs to constantly be learning. And sometimes people want to say, okay, I'm going to let you learn at school. No, you should be doing your parents are the first learners anyway. And like you said, we have to take accountability, even though those might not be our children, those are still our children, those are still our children. They might not be biological our children, but they are still our children. And they say it takes a village. And when it takes a village, it doesn't mean, the village in your house. It means the village and the surrounding of where you are. It takes the teacher, it takes the parent, it takes the neighbor, it takes, the friends, the family. It takes everyone, for a person to be successful and to be fully well-rounded. Whether the person has all these things or not, those interactions are really priceless. So to think that, oh no, I'm just going to take care of my family, like you said, that stuff comes back to you. And when it does come back, you could have been a person that could have helped him to read or could have helped him to write. And he could have had a different life, but you saw him as, oh, that's not my child, that's not my responsibility. And it came back and it affected you because we're all connected. And so,
Right.
if you're able to do your part, if you're a teacher, you're a tutor, whatever you're able, even if you're able, like you said, to clean the trash, do trash up, do something. We have to live in this world together. Why walk over the trash when you can just pick it up? Why put the trash beside the trash can when you can just put it in the trash can? It's about mindset. And so what we do, we can start with education. We need to help people see things differently. And, with you and I and others, we can help them see things differently through math because, with math, that's the beginning of your critical thinking process. Why would I put the trash beside the trash can when I can just put the trash here? That's critical thinking skills, and it starts really basic and it builds up. So yeah, that's definitely true. Like in some places in education, they have limited resources. Why does this person have limited resources? Or why is this people they only get a certain amount of thousands for this child, but if you go into this neighborhood, you get that. I mean, there's a lot of disparities and things like that when it comes to resources, when it comes to teachers not properly being trained in mathematics. You can't just go into the class and think you can just teach math. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into teaching math. You got to actually have the feeling that these kids can learn. Some teacher actually say these kids can't learn, and I'm just like, wow, why are you in the classroom? If you're thinking the kids can't learn and you're the teacher, no wonder the kid has his head down on the desk. No wonder the kids running around acting crazy. They already know that you already think that they can't learn, and I've come past people like that in my career where they think the kids can't learn. And so like I said, teacher training and everything else, and teacher training is teaching people a lot of times to see people as human. So it's like human training. See these
Yeah.
people just like you see yourself, because we all are people, but it's like some things in their head they see people differently because maybe the color of their skin. I mean, you're teaching these kids, but you see them less than, and so you're not going to really try to put your best into the kids because you don't see them as being the best, or you might have stereotypes that, oh, they're criminals, oh they're liars, oh they're this, they're that, and you could be told that coming from a different country over here that, don't go over there. That's the violent side. Or, I have seen teachers that came to America to teach, and they were told that Black people were this or that. So they already scared coming into the classroom, about what's going on. They already see the Black people as being threatening. These were some teachers that came from the Philippines. They was told not to go there, not to do this, not to do that, see these people as that. And these were the people that were coming into the community to teach the children. They already scared of the children and thinking the children are wild animals. And so teacher training is very important, and it's really important who does the training, because obviously the people that was trying to teach them, already had a fear of Black people anyway, and they teaching other people to be fearful, and they have to go into the system and teach these kids. I mean, how much, what type of quality of education are you really giving if you're fearful of the kids and you see them as being the animal like, and then the other part is you don't even know the historical relevance of slavery. You don't even know slavery exists. Some
Right.
of those teachers never even heard of slavery, and they saying, "Why is everything so white and Black in America?" And I'm like, "Have you heard of slavery? We had slavery there." I said, "But have you heard of slavery here?" And then you have to give like a historical lesson, because they're teaching kids, but they never heard of slavery. And you're just, if you haven't heard of slavery and you're teaching Black kids, then you're missing the point of a lot of reasons why a lot of things are happening. You're just seeing these kids acting this way for no reason, or you're seeing these people in these situations for no reason, and you don't understand the fundamentals of slavery. And so, yeah, so it needs to be training. Training needs to be done by people that are, that are in diversity and actually understand slavery, and um actually care for, no, actually respect, people in general. Have, not I respect these people, but no, I don't respect them because I'm scared of those because I heard these stories about them. But you need to have someone that's qualified to teach people how to teach all people. So yeah, so this in the school system, there are some things lacking. Like I said, with training, you said resources are lacking, and then things are really is really in particular who's going to get this versus who's going to get that. And we learned that in COVID. In COVID, a lot of things got exposed. The technology thing got exposed. Some people had tablets, some people didn't. Some people had Wi-Fi, some people didn't. And it was just a lot going on. But it really put things to the forefront. A lot of people don't have what you think they do have. And it's like some people are really, on a lower level, because not only that they don't have these resources, it's just that they're in survival mode because they don't have their basic necessities. Some people might come to school hungry. Some people might come to school um not having a home. They might be homeless. There were several kids that I had to deal with. Somebody could have been homeless. Somebody could have been this. It's just so many different things that you can experience, and those kids, they need to have some type of support emotionally to help them get through that. We putting them on the same level as everybody else, but those kids might not even have a basic meal. You're expecting them to pass this or expecting them to do this, but you got to take in consideration, this child almost didn't make it here today because of this crazy situation. And so, there needs to be more support. Someone needs to hear the story. Someone needs to, you know, and like I said, the kids are really brave and they do a lot. They're able to accomplish a lot, even though they don't have the basic skills. And so there needs to be some support there, that when a kid comes hungry or a kid is homeless, I mean, if you want them to have these test scores, you have to consider those things also. You can't just be blinded. Oh, okay, he needs to get this, but do you know that he's homeless? He's living on the street. I mean, that could kind of do something to someone's mentality and to their functionality. Take those things into consideration and give those kids a chance so that they can compete. And that's a bigger story. So I'm gonna stop right there with that because I can go on and on and on. All right. The next question I wanted to know, um, now when it comes to homeschooling, now I've been a homeschooler and there's so many benefits to homeschooling. Some people say there's pros and there's cons. I saw a lot of pros because I came from an educational background and I had the resources and the knowledge to do certain things when it came to homeschooling. And during the COVID time, COVID-19, everyone pretty much became a homeschooler. You know, some people that was online virtually, the traditional homeschoolers don't consider them homeschoolers, but we're gonna say everybody was homeschoolers. And so everyone had to get in and do everything, and they started gaining more appreciation for teachers because they realized, oh my goodness, this is a real job. How do they do it? So when it comes to homeschooling, what are your pros and cons, or how do you feel about homeschooling? And how do you what do you think overall about homeschooling?
Well, I don't see a lot of cons in it at all.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
it's, even though, I mean, like I said, that nothing's all good and nothing's all bad, but um, with homeschooling, you really get to leverage the personal relationship you have with your children and the love that you have for your children, or at least the love that you should have for your children,
Right.
um, into, educational opportunity. Um, Oftentimes it is, I mean, some fathers do homeschool, but I think overwhelmingly the majority of homeschooling that takes place by mothers is being administered by mothers. And that makes sense because the mothers are the initial educators. Um, I quote Amos Wilson whenever possible. If you know, even I remember reading this book, The
Oh, okay.
Developmental Psychology of the Black Child, where he, as a psychologist, talks about the fact that the educational process of a child actually begins in utero.
Mm,
So that's why it's so important to be mindful and be aware of like what type of environments as a pregnant mother, where you have your child at, who you're around, what type of conversations you're having, what type of conversations the people around you are having, because the child is like, internalizing all that. So then when the child is born, then you're continuing to teach your child about life, about humanity, about the world. And it will make sense that you are able to homeschool if possible. We know that with economic conditions being what they are, everyone doesn't have that ability because we have to provide food, clothing, and shelter for everybody.
right.
So unfortunately, a lot of people have to go into the workforce. Well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. It just depends on the circumstances. It could be fortunate, it could be unfortunate, but a
Right.
lot of people have to go into the workforce in order to be able to provide economically for the household and contribute to that. But I think if possible, I think more people should at least consider homeschooling. I will say that I think one reason a lot of people do not consider homeschooling is because of a lot of negative propaganda. Um, just like there's negative propaganda around a lot of things that people don't do or don't want to attempt to do or don't want to embrace, such as mathematics. Like there's a lot of negative propaganda around math, about how
Mhm.
math is irrelevant, math is too difficult, math is hard. You have to be born with a math gene or else you won't be able to do it. Um, the same, similar to homeschooling. Like people think that if you homeschool your kids, they're going to be weirdos. They're not going to be properly socialized.
Mm.
Um, and again, like we should really think. I mean, I think we should have some serious conversations about what that means. So when you say a child is not going to be properly socialized if they're homeschooled, as opposed to being properly socialized from being in a public school or a charter
Mhm.
school or a private school,
Mhm.
then we should really be forced to define what proper socialization looks like.
Right.
Because
Right.
I would argue that a lot of the shiftless, unhealthy, inappropriate behaviors that children exhibit and adults exhibit were learned when they were in charter, public, and private schools.
That's
So
true.
if we want to talk about socialization processes, then we should be more critical, more analytical about
Mhm.
what that means. How do you define proper socialization?
Mhm.
Um, of course, at the same time, if you're not part of a collective, I think homeschool collectives are valuable or
The
invaluable actually,
co-ops.
because
Mhm.
that's where you get the opportunity for socialization.
Mhm.
Because somebody might think initially like, well, I just want to protect my child from the world and I want to keep them to myself. I want to be fully responsible for their complete educational experience. So I'm just gonna teach every subject. We're just gonna be in the household every day.
That's what some do. Some do that. Some do
I,
that.
I think that has its limitations, So, but if you're part of a collective or a co-op, then,
Right.
you're meeting other people, you're still participating in extracurricular activities,
Hmm.
so you're still able to socialize. And due to the fact that there are concerned parents and adults that are supervising these activities, and you're not worried about a school where its model really comes from prison in many ways.
Wow.
um, even even in very subtle ways. One of the things I always remember thinking about, and I would comment about this sometimes when I worked at one of the charter schools here in Philly, um, is that when there would be a half day, we would have these schedules for like half days.
Hmm.
And the schedules, and I'm sure a lot of schools probably do this, and some people probably overlook it, don't think anything of it, but I think language is very critical. Language is very important because language is a conduit of culture, and language
Okay.
has a way, even if subtle, of communicating what the intentions are, even if not by that or that author, but the original author, right?
Hmm.
So early dismissal days were called early release days. Early, half days were early. It was like an early release schedule. And I would
Okay.
look at that and I always think to myself, like, why is the word release used there? When I think of
Wow, I
release,
never heard that. The release schedule. We never use that terminology.
yeah, when I think of that, I think of a prison. Like I'm getting
Release
out of prison,
schedule.
getting out of jail. Like
Right. Right.
usually
I
I
know.
gotta stay. Like as a student, I would talk to my students like, don't this make y'all feel some type of way? Like, because it's kind of like they're implying that, and even if it's even if it's unwittingly, the intent versus impact. If the intent is not there, the
Wow.
impact is still there because
Early release.
if you
Wow. I
if you're
never heard
saying,
them say that for early leaving early. I haven't heard them use that.
yeah, it was like the schedules. I probably got one like a souvenir from like one of them schools, probably in my basement and my paperwork and whatnot. I probably
Wow.
kept it, on purpose, just to like have the documentation to show. But and a
Hmm.
lot of schools still use it. I've seen it recently. I've seen it recently in somebody's school that I happen to be in. But it's like it implies this idea that normally you get out of jail at 3 o'clock, but on these half
Mm.
days you get out of jail at 1:15 or 12:30 because you get released early. So like it reinforces these notions about education, and what schooling, really is. But,
Hmm.
but so in a homeschooling scenario, hopefully, that's not going to be the idea because you're going to actually look forward to educational opportunities. And the educational opportunities are much more intertwined and connected with your daily experiences and daily
Hmm.
activities. Like there's one of the things I'm going to be doing with all this math, which is, you know, is developing some programming centered around empowering parents to kind of teach where they're at, like teach
Mm.
math using you know uh receipts,
Okay.
um food product packages, and grocery circulars,
Okay.
because there's so many numbers, and there's such a wealth of just different quantitative analysis that you can do
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
from those items right there. And
Hmm.
because we spend money and we get receipts. Well, some people don't ask for the receipt, or some people throw receipts away, but I think we should save receipts, especially
Oh.
if you're saving them for tax purposes anyway. You can use all those receipts to like teach math lessons on arithmetic,
Okay.
fractions, proportions, ratios, percentages.
Hmm.
You can do all of those types of things with different aged children. And this is like, it's something where, parents can do this, family members can do this. And it's a way to like empower our people to not feel like if my child is going to learn math, they have to learn it from somebody in a building, in a public school or a charter school.
Hmm.
Like, because I think once we start to realize that we can actually we can actually teach our own children, because I think that's another issue too. Like a lot of us, we don't believe that we're equipped and qualified to teach our own children.
Right. Right. That's true.
And
They believe that.
that's not to take away. So I want to be careful when I say that, because it's not to devalue those of us that have formal backgrounds in education and have studied and have honed our craft and developed our skill set. Um, but I do, and because I do think that that's also important to recognize. But at the same time, the parent that does not have the formal training is not as ill-equipped as they may think that they are.
Right.
And there
Right.
are also a lot of ways in which we as professional teachers or professors have honed our craft that through within an institution that parents can also do in their own space as well.
Hmm.
You know, because a lot of like, I often say that like, you know, because I don't have a bachelor's degree in education.
Hmm.
At that point in my life, I didn't want to be a teacher. I became a teacher later. I changed careers and became a teacher later. And then I took coursework, and a lot of my training was really on the job training. Like, you know, my students taught me how to teach because I had to learn how to teach them.
Right.
And
Right.
I had to learn their learning styles.
Hmm.
And I had to learn what didn't work. And I had to learn what did work. And it was really very much experimental. Um, you know, and I think that's something that parents have to understand too, because I think many parents have this idea that we as professional teachers, we just get it right. Like we write the lesson plan
No.
and we just come in and teach it
No.
and everybody learns it. And no, like it doesn't
It
work
comes
like
with
that.
time.
Yeah, it comes with time. And then like, and you know, a lot of times you got to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, this didn't work the way I thought it was. So
Right.
what adjustments can I make? You got to be reflective. So as a parent, you might think of like, okay, well, I want to teach them about fractions. And then your child is totally lost and doesn't understand. So then you feel like, see, I'm a failure. I can't homeschool. I can't teach my child, but they don't understand that like professional teachers with degrees had that same problem. So
Hmm.
like, you know, and the professional teacher with the degree is not going to say, well, you know, I quit. I can't do this. They're going to go back to the drawing board and say, well, what adjustment, hopefully if they have the opportunity, what adjustments can I make so that
Right.
I'm more successful tomorrow?
If
You
they
know,
can
so
see
as a
that they're the
parent, you have to do the
problem,
same thing.
if they can see that they're the problem, some teachers can't see that they're the problem. So we're
Right.
talking about teachers that can see that they're the problem. They'll go back and change it. Others will keep doing the same thing for 10, 20 years. And
Yeah. It's so limiting. Like that's so I don't I'm not an advocate of I think we should have what is it, what I call it, balanced ego. Because some
Mhm.
people just want to like just say you shouldn't have no ego at all. And I don't think
Right,
that's
right,
healthy either. I think some people have too much ego, but then at the same time, I think some people don't have enough.
right,
But
right.
I think we have to be like, I think some people they have too much ego where it affects their teaching ability, their ability to become great teachers because
Hmm.
they believe fundamentally that their method is the best method, their
Right.
method
That's
is the
it.
only method. And it's so limiting because you really could become better just
Right,
by admitting that, okay, this way I did it, these 5 students over here didn't get it.
right,
So what if I try to figure out another way to teach it so now I've expanded my reach and I've expanded my ability. So now I'm even better than I was, right?
right.
Instead of just saying, no, I'm not changing nothing. And you know, since we're talking about this, this is one of the, see, this is not discussed enough. So I want to put it out there, right?
Hmm.
This is a game that's played in the special admission schools. And I taught at a special admission school here in Philly. I went to a special admission high school in Baltimore. I went to Poly, right?
Okay.
I went to
One of my sons went to Poly, yeah.
I went to Roland Park for middle school. So I know the whole like special admission game.
Right.
And I taught at Central here in Philly for a year. And one things I noticed is that teachers in the special admission schools are never going to be held to the same scrutiny in terms of their teaching ability because it's very easy to just
Mm.
blame the student and say, well, the student couldn't handle the rigor.
Mm.
And nobody will ever sit. And a lot of times people won't say, well, no, you're a bad teacher. Because they'll say, no, well, this, you understand the reputation of this school? This
Right,
school is only for the smart kids. This
right.
school is only for the brilliant kids. So there's this idea that if we believe through the marketing, the years and years and hundreds of years of marketing, or however long that school's been in existence, and how
Mhm.
people fight and claw and will give up a kidney just so their child can go to that
Go to that
school, right?
school, right. Mhm.
Right? If we believe in that and buy into that, then it's like, okay, well, if your child's not doing well, then it can't be nothing wrong with the school.
Right.
It
Can't be
can't
the
be nothing wrong with
teacher.
the teacher. It could never be the
Mm-mm.
teacher because I've bought into this idea and this marketing that this school is perfect,
Right.
that these are actually not human beings in this classroom. These are not human beings that are teaching. These are, because I believe that the students have to be brilliant to go there and stay there. So concomitantly, I guess that's a good word. Yeah, concomitantly, the
Okay.
teachers have to be geniuses and have to be, perfect educators. And I would
Mm,
sit back and I would just watch and I'd be like, because the thing about when I taught at Central, I didn't have my own classroom. I was a floater, right? So I
mm,
would just go around like when I would use different people's classrooms when
mm-hmm,
they were on their prep. That's how my schedule was set up.
mm-hmm.
So in between classes, sometimes I would just sit in other people's classrooms and I would just watch them teach, and I'd be like, I would try to put myself in the position of the student, and I'd be like, he didn't really explain that very well, or she didn't really
Mm,
explain that very well, or he just runs through problems. He doesn't even take a moment to like, test the temperature of the room and see if people even understand what he's saying because he doesn't
mm,
care. Because
right,
he's like, well, I'm teaching it. This is how it is. I'm explaining it to you. If you don't get it, you're on your own. And
right.
so many people are like, well, this is a rigorous school. So if your child don't get it, if your child's not doing well, then your child just not smart enough. And their
Wow.
teaching ability is often never called into question.
Never.
And another reason I thought about that was because I was so curious. I started asking around, like, when I was starting to getting to know some of some of my colleagues. I'd be like, so how long have you been here? Like, oh yeah, I've been here 10 years. I've been here 5 years. And oh, so you didn't teach here your whole career? No, I was at this school or that school or this school or that school.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, so almost everybody here, y'all all came from neighborhood schools. Y'all all came from quote unquote bad schools.
Mm,
But now you're here, right? You got in over here. And I wonder, like, what was your reputation as a teacher in those other schools? Now, maybe you were a good teacher in those other schools. Maybe you were.
mm-hmm.
But I'm sure some of them wasn't good teachers in them other schools. I know they weren't. They couldn't have been because I sat in their classes and I watched them and I listened to them. I saw. And I also would hear the commentary from the students as well. But I saw it with my own eyes. I'm like, okay,
Mm.
see what you're doing. Um, but also that goes to show about the marketing of the special admission,
Oh
quote
yeah.
unquote, good school,
Oh
how that
yeah.
works, how that
Mm-hmm.
marketing works. Because like even with me, like I experienced it because once I started telling people, oh yeah, I teach at this school, I teach at Central High School, then like people's eyes light up, like, oh, you teach there, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because so the day I start teaching there, I start telling people I teach there, their eyes light up. 24 hours ago, before I came there, the last school I was at, I was at a charter school here in Philly because
Uh-huh.
I moved during the first quarter of that school year. People's eyes didn't light up when I told them I taught there.
Yeah.
But my question is, okay, so we look at it, if we look at it mathematically, how much did my teaching ability increase or improve within that 24-hour period when I went from one
It was
school
just
to
the
the next?
name. It was just the
It's the
name.
name.
The
So
status.
right. So you associate me with this special admission school. Now, in order that you don't experience cognitive dissonance, now you have to believe that I have to be this great teacher that
Right.
can move
He
mountains
must
just
be.
because
He's
I'm
at that
there.
school. He's at that school. He must be smart.
Right. But when I was at the previous school, I was the same level of teacher. Just last week, I was the same level of teacher, but you would never assume that
Yeah.
because of your perception of that institution.
Right.
So, and what I realized is like a lot of teachers, they live off of the perception of the institution. So it's not even about their ability.
Right.
It's like we just want to believe that they're great just because they're there. And
Right.
a lot of teachers that are in special admission schools, the magnet schools, the so-called good schools that
Mm-hmm.
are trash. They're trash. They're literally
Yeah.
trash. And they're even more, it's more likely that there's going to be trash because they have less of an incentive to improve
Okay.
because they
Yeah.
can always fall back and just say, well, if you don't get it, I'm not changing nothing. That ain't on me. You just
Right. It's
not,
on
they
you.
can, they can say you're not smart enough to be here.
Right.
Like you should go to your neighborhood school or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah. They
these are
can always
like,
use that.
yeah, these are the games that people play, and like a lot. And again, so this is what math comes into play because
Mm-hmm.
again, that's critical thinking is required to even think to yourself to even question have that type of question.
Right.
Like, wait a minute, like, are you really a great teacher just because you're in this school that
Right.
everybody thinks is great? If you don't have, I believe that if you don't have a mathematical background or a mathematical a certain level of mathematical understanding, when you're confronted with those types of situations and scenarios, you won't even know to ask that question.
Of
You'll
course.
just go with the flow.
You go. You
You'll just go
would.
with the
You would.
flow.
You
You'll
would.
never ask questions, which brings you back to my point from what we talked about earlier, which is why
Mm-hmm.
you have to keep people ignorant of mathematics because the real result of mathematical proficiency is so much bigger than a standardized test score. It's about developing human beings that can really challenge authority. Because
Yes.
you start to challenge authority, but you can
Thinking,
question authority.
right. Think big.
Because so many people in authority are just so used to just coming out and just saying anything and people just accepting it.
Right.
And I'm
Because
sure
that's
you've
that's
been,
who that person is.
yeah, and I'm sure you've been in spaces just like I've been in spaces where
Mhm.
somebody comes out, stands up in front of the room with a group of people, and it just says something that's just off the wall. The only
Mm.
person that recognizes it is off the wall, and everybody else is just sitting around like it's cool. And you're like, am I the only one that heard what he just said? Am
Right.
I
They
the only
don't
one that heard
know.
what she just said?
They don't
Do you
know.
not understand the implication of what they just said? Like what is going on? Like, am I in the
Yeah.
twilight zone right now? But what it is because we have that ability to reason and have and
Right.
analyze and think about things critically. Whereas a lot of people don't. They're so
Hmm.
used to just being told what to do. And like I
Hmm.
said too, like, it's like we attach status to not
Intellect.
having to think, to not
Hmm.
not not not. I was gonna say to not having to think. Like
Okay.
we have the
Okay. Right.
luxury to not use our brains. Like you see that as
Right.
a luxury. Like that's not a luxury. It's not a luxury to not use your brain. That's very harmful. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, but that's something I wanted to bring up.
And that is
Is
true.
how a lot of teachers that teach at the special admission schools, like the maybe the polys and the
The
Westons and maybe even the
cities.
cities, a lot of them, man, they're not good teachers. They're not good teachers. I'm sure there are good teachers there, but I'm sure a lot of them are not good teachers,
See,
because
I have to sit in the classroom and see. I could sit there and see. But yeah, you're telling the truth because you know what? When you're teaching when you're teaching in that environment and you already have a name for yourself, you feel that there's no need for growth. And when you feel that there's no need for growth as a teacher, you already lost.
right.
Because teaching, you need to, as a teacher, you need to be learning and growing also. The learning process never stops. And a teacher that can't learn anymore is not going to be the teacher that we need for our generations to come because these kids are coming with questions. And that
Mhm.
teacher going to be the one like, nope, I'm not answering that question. That wasn't even an important question. Next. Those type of teachers are not qualified to answer questions because maybe the question took them to a place that they haven't been because they're not learning and expanding their mind. And so some of those kids that actually challenge them will be considered the bad kids and wind up getting kicked out the class because they're asking a question that makes sense. Well, if this is this and this is this, isn't it true that this is this? Oh no, that's not true. That's not mathematically true. Yes, it is true. And the kids are challenging. When you have a child that challenge a teacher that's on a certain status, the teacher would just say, you know what, you're being this defiant, you're being this. So there's a lot of intelligent kids that some of those teachers can't deal with, and they're not learning, and so they're not even trying to even say, let me think about it and get back with you tomorrow because that's an important question.
Yeah.
Sometimes kids do put you on the spots and you got to be like, you know what, wow, that's an important question. Let me think about it and get back. Or you can just go and try to practice and see what they're saying is true. And then a lot of situations, I'll be like, this is true for your particular reason, but it's not always true for that math problem. Because
Right.
when I give you this, you'll see it doesn't always work. But
Yeah.
for your reason this time, it did work, but it doesn't always work. But it's good that you
Right.
saw that. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get something that work, and we look at it and like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
But the
when we
question is,
go
does
by
it
the
work all
math
the time?
rules, it's not
Yeah.
gonna always work. They just lucked up. I'm
Right.
like, you just lucked up this time. And I'm like, that's good because sometimes in math you do get the right answer. But you just gotta see if you switch the numbers up, is this always going to work?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to teach you to think, whereas, it's a situation that, no matter what you plug in, it's always going to work. You don't want to be guessing, picking and choosing. But yeah,
Yeah. So and you want to address that because, like, an example came to mind, like where a student might say, like, well, if 2 to the second power is equal to 4, and I know that 2 times 2 is 4, how come 3 to the second power ain't 6? And,
right.
like, because it might say something like that. And I believe
Absolutely.
that that might be like a reason that a lot of students like get that wrong, or they'll like multiply the base by the exponent
Hmm.
and get it wrong. And you gotta pay homage to the fact that, well, 2 squared, it is like that with 2 squared, but that's a coincidence, you
Right.
know. Um,
That's
so
so
yeah,
true.
Just, but
Yeah.
but I like you, like you. I like those experiences. I like those situations when the students like bring that stuff up,
Mhm.
because then it helps my teaching, because the next time it's something that I can put out there. I can like, I can kind of be more premeditated,
Mhm.
and in my lesson planning and in my lesson delivery, I can point this out, and I can say,
Right.
this might work sometimes, but be
Right.
careful because it's not going to work all the time.
Right.
Because that's the test right there. Does it work
That
all the
is
time?
right.
And of
That is
course,
the
we
test.
can't know if it's going to work all the time, because we can't do because there's an infinite amount of numbers,
Right.
right?
Right.
There's an infinite amount of numbers, so we won't be able to have the time or ability to test every number in the universe. But once we start to recognize that, okay, well, this is a pattern,
Mhm.
we start to see the pattern, then we can safely assume that this is going to work for every number. But
Right.
a lot of times, like, you'll be, once you find that situation where it doesn't work, then you're
Right.
like, oh, okay, yeah, this can't be a rule. This is an
Right.
exception.
Right. But the kids are good. The kids are good because they're always thinking. And so the teacher needs to be always thinking. So the kids are like this, and the teacher need to be like this. Everyone
Yeah,
needs to be like engaged in the lesson, not like this.
yeah,
This is not math. Then, like
right.
I said, that's something else, but it's not math. Math is like, okay, what's this? What's that? What you think? What you think? This is math. Get interactive and things are, and looking at people and they're thinking, you see the children thinking and you're pulling information out of them, not just pushing stuff in them. That's not math because everyone doesn't think the same. So people are restricted thinking math is like this. When math is like this, if you get the teacher that's going to be like, okay, so what's next? The teacher just pulling it out of you. But unfortunately, that comes with training. And the trainers, we have to check the trainers because the trainers might not know. So it's about giving power away. The teacher doesn't need to have the power. The kids are not going to learn all the way if the teacher has the power. You have to be able to give the power to the children so they can be able to step up and come into their self, whether self-actualization or whatever, where they can actually grow and be like, oh, you have to give it to them. You have to sit back and watch it develop. You don't have to be stopping every process of the way, because sometimes kids will ask a question and give them a second. They ask a question, give them a second, they'll answer it. Don't let them answer a question and you get them an answer right away. Sometimes they be like, oh, okay. Oh no, it's this. You just sit back and see it and you see the process. But it takes time for you to sit back and see it if you have time. But it's like everybody's rushing, but while you rushing trying to bring people up, you really leaving the majority of you're losing the majority. But you're like, as long as I got the top third, forget about the 2/3, and the top is not even the top third. You just have the 1/3 in the middle. Teachers teach you the 1/3 in the middle. The ones at the top, they get bored and whatever, if they don't differentiate. And the ones down the bottom get lost. So the teacher mainly is teaching to the middle kids that's on grade level. What about the gifted kids? What about the kids that's a little bit slow as far as processing? You have to differentiate and you have to actually care to really, get those kids to where they need to be. Those gifted kids need to be challenged. You need to come in with a question that's going to sit them there for a couple of, some minutes and have them think. Because they're going to get through that math practice. They're going to get through that math practice and that's not challenging them. They need a word problem. Get
Mhm.
them a word problem, sit them over there and see if they can figure it out. And then the other ones, they need to build up their basics remediation skills. They're lacking in those skills, so they need to be doing more practice. And why, you just have to be differentiating so that you can reach all the kids, not just the 1/3 in the middle. And so, it comes with training. And so my next question is, you already kind of answered it. I was going to ask you, how can parents help their children excel when they're struggling? You already answered it because you said you're going to have a program where so the community is going to come together and you're going to have them bring, then you say you talked about receipts. So you're going to give them like demonstrations of what they can do themselves or what they already have, and work on those things, so that they can help their children. So a lot of the stuff you had covered as far as if a person is struggling, you're going to let them know what they have already is sufficient enough, and you're going to help them see the mathematics in that, right? As far as
Yeah,
helping them when they struggle
yes,
with math themselves.
yeah. That's one type of programming. But the thing that parents are gonna have to do is be willing. Well, more parents. are going to have to do something that they probably never done before and they've never even thought about doing before, which is deciding to learn the math that they never learned when they were in school. A lot of people, and this is something I think about a lot, thinking back on like those classroom experiences with students that would say, I'm never going to use this stuff. Why do I need to learn this? And there's so many ways you could respond to that, you know, as a teacher that actually understands math and understands the world and, you know, lives in the world and looks at the world through a mathematical lens. But one thing that's often overlooked, that's so obvious and so blatant, is that, you know, a lot of us are going to have children. A lot of us are going to have nieces and nephews. A lot of us are going to have grandchildren eventually. And they're going to have homework.
Right.
So they're going to need somebody to help them with their homework. It's like, as our job and our responsibility as elders is to be able to help the youth. That's part of our job and part of our responsibilities, to help the youth with things they need help with. So if they need homework and, you know, you can't help them with homework, then, you know, I mean, I'm sure you might be able to help them with some other things, but what if you could help them with their homework also?
Right.
You know, how wonderful would that be? You know? So that's one time you're definitely going to need to use it, because your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your own children, they're going to need to know how to do it. So I think parents are going to have to make a decision that they want to learn the math that they never learned when they were in school. I think beyond that, it's up to people like you and I to create the opportunities for them to actually learn it, to provide the resources that makes it comfortable for them to actually learn it, resources that are effective. Because I think that's the other part of it that's often missing, because a lot of people, you know, in terms of making criticisms of the Black community, will say things like, you know, parents should do this and parents should do that. And like, we're very long on recommendations, but we're very short on resources.
Right.
That could be used to make those recommendations come to fruition. So, and again, this is what I have in mind as I develop out my YouTube channel. Like, I want my channel to be a place, among other things, I want my channel to be a place where any parent in the community can say, all right, my daughter, my son, my grandson, my granddaughter, my niece, my nephew, they're having trouble with homework. I want to help them. So you can send them to the channel, or you can say, look, we're going to go to the channel together. We're going to go to the playlist, find the topic that you're working on. We're going to find a problem. We're going to watch the video. We're going to pause the video at different times. We're going to take notes on the video. And then once I understand it, like me as the adult, I feel obligated that I need to learn this because I want to help you, because I love you and I care about you. You know, you're a part of my family. I'm an elder. I'm trying to look out for you. Just like if you told me somebody was bullying you, you know, or if you told me that the teacher was mistreating you, I would go to the school, I would schedule a conference, and I would be up at that school the next day. You know, this is another form of protection.
Right.
Being able to provide education. You know, being able to provide education is definitely definitely a form of protection, but it's often overlooked because we don't think that it's our responsibility.
Right.
We think it's just the school's responsibility.
No way.
We have to change that mindset and start to begin to believe that we are the primary educators. It is our responsibility to educate our children. And the schools, if we do send our children to school, they should be secondary. Like, your job should be to provide a safe space for my child to practice what myself and my community or my household has already taught them.
That's a good outlook.
So I want to reorient our entire community, because then things become very different.
Yeah, that's definitely, I'm sorry, I was gonna say that's definitely a different mindset, you know. And what you were saying, the thing about the parents, I want to say this really quick. Not only are they going to be helping their children, but they're going to be helping themselves, because it's somewhere in their educational path where it was a gap or a disconnect. And so when they go back to revisit the fractions or the decimals, you're going to see them like, Oh, because they've been coming past things in their journey as an adult where they couldn't solve certain problems or certain things didn't make sense. And it's not that they couldn't learn, it's just that it was a gap, or maybe it wasn't explained all the way, or maybe they couldn't get it at that point. But now when you go through and you show them things and they pick it up, and they connect to their prior knowledge, it's going to be like a stronger bond, and it's going to make sense, and it's going to really change their life. Not only their children, but it's really going to change their life, make them feel comfortable as a person, and maybe get over that math anxiety and fear and all those other different math things that they might have going on. And that's going to really empower them once they get over it, because it's
Yeah,
like a dirty secret. They don't know how to do fractions. That's like a dirty secret. Please
right,
nobody show me a fraction. Please nobody show me a decimal. They live in fear that no one would ask them how to do that, because it's a disconnect somewhere in their education, that it didn't connect. But now when
right,
when they're exposed to what you're showing them, it's going to connect, and it's going to make them feel better overall. And so it's going
right.
to be inspirational to a lot of people on a lot of different levels.
And that issue with the example of fractions that you brought up has very serious and deep political and economic implications for the entire society, because if you don't understand fractions, then you end up just focusing on the numerator in a particular fraction, and
Wow.
you don't understand the relationship between the numerator and
And the
denominator.
denominator.
And then you'll
Wow.
say things like, you know, I mean, let's take professional athletes as an example. And some people will say that, and I would agree, I would tend to agree with them that professional athletes typically, I think, are overpaid. But even with that being said, the owners are far more overpaid. But
Mm,
if you don't understand fractions, then you'll look at, a certain athlete and say, well, he's already getting $10 million a year or $5 million a year. But you're not looking at the fact that, well, how much money is that particular athlete generating altogether
right.
across the board? How many billions of dollars is he contributing to the creation of in
Yep.
terms of income?
Fraction.
But because
Mm,
we don't understand fractions, whether the procedure to perform operations with fractions, and we don't even understand fractions conceptually, we don't even get into that. We just be like,
right.
listen, he make $5 million, $5 million, he make a lot of money, he need to sit down, stop complaining, just be happy. But it's like, okay, and like I said, I'm inclined to agree that I do think athletes are overpaid relative to other professions in the society. But I can also admit that if an owner is making 1.5 billion dollars a year
Mm,
from that athlete running around on the field, putting his life at risk. And of
right.
course, we could say, well, that athlete made a choice to run around the field and put his life at risk. That's
Mhm.
fine. But that's not my argument here. My argument is that the amount of money that that particular athlete is making as a fraction of the total amount of money that he is contributing to
Mhm.
the generation of
Mhm.
is a very small fraction. So
Right.
once we start to understand that, excuse me, once we start to understand that, um, comparatively speaking to the amount that the owners are making, that the
Mhm.
television networks are making, that the
Right.
other companies are making that surround him, um, now it's a different conversation. But
Yeah,
you
it is
can't
a
even
different
have that
conversation.
conversation unless you understand the concept of fractions.
Right. And why people
And we don't
complain,
understand the
why
concept of fractions.
and why people complain why their contract needs to be this, because they start seeing their value. They've been getting this, but for some reason, I want this amount of millions for 4 years, because they know their value. They know the money they're making. They see the light, but at first they didn't. They just saw the whole, like you said, the numerator, but now they see the denominator, and they know they only getting probably like 10% of what they could be getting if they have a chance to do it on their own.
Because you
Um,
understand, you start to understand the relationship between your part and the entire part,
mhm,
right? Just like when just like those of us that just work jobs, go to work every day, get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and
mhm.
don't make millions of dollars. But let's say you work a sales job, and you sit back one day and you realize, like, with all of these items that I'm selling, these objects, these cars, this furniture, whatever it might be, especially if you work off commission, you
Mhm.
start to say, well, damn, I'm making these people all this money, but this is what my paycheck looks like.
Right.
And my commission is this percentage. And like, yeah, I might be comfortable, but I'm making them a lot of money.
Right.
I'm making them a whole lot of money. And I'm not, I mean, I don't, and I'm not even, yeah, okay. Somebody could say, well, this company has a lot of overhead and the company is taking the risk and doing all that. Even with that, I'm still making you a lot of money compared to
Mm.
what you're actually paying me. So
Right.
then that might motivate some people to say, well, why don't I branch out? Why don't I venture out and become an entrepreneur? I already have the skill set.
Mm-hmm.
I already have the ability. So why do I need to, basically sell my labor to
Mm-hmm.
somebody else?
I can just do it
But you may
myself.
not even, yeah, you may not even ever get to that thought
You
process
might
if
never
you
get
don't
there.
understand fractions. If you don't
Right.
understand math, then these thoughts may not even ever occur to you. That's
They
why
might never.
I'm a firm believer that there's nothing coincidental about the fact that mathematical illiteracy or mathematical ignorance has to be maintained. It has to
Mm-hmm.
be maintained because it's the only way to keep this society intact
Yeah,
the way
math
it
is
is.
powerful. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're right. Math is very powerful. And if you can control math and how it's distributed and who gets what and who learns what, I mean, that's what's been going on because math is extremely powerful.
Can I
Um,
say something else before the next question? Can I say something
yeah.
else about like math
Uh-huh.
anxiety? So, like I mentioned earlier in our conversation, like I too experience math anxiety sometimes, but I
Mhm.
think the difference is I also know that I have the confidence to know that I'm going to figure it out. I'll
Mm.
give you a case in point. Um, I have a student that's taking pre-cal, and a lot of the pre-cal stuff I don't remember, or maybe some of it I never learned it. So the brother has some examples of composite inverse trig functions.
Oh, okay, fine.
So I looked them up and I'm like, wait, I don't get it. I don't know how to do this. So I'm working through some of the problems and,
Mhm.
and then I'm looking online for videos and whatnot. And the video, you know how like you look for videos, but the video isn't exactly what you're looking for. It's not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
exact example. So then you got to
Mhm.
like piece different videos together and you're like taking
And
notes
try
and
to figure it
whatnot.
out yourself.
And it's very angering. It's very uncomfortable. It makes me mad. Like I don't like to not understand things. That's one of the most frustrating things for me in life is to not understand things. But what I realize is once I do understand it and I do figure it out, the feeling of understanding it is probably 10 times better than how bad the feeling of not understanding it is.
Oh, okay.
So it's worth it. And this is what I want parents to understand,
Mhm.
when they're trying to teach themselves or trying to learn the math that they never learned before, is that it's worth it to persevere. Because even if it's just about the feeling is so great when you say, okay, I know how to do this now.
And when you finally get it, yeah.
Right. I get it now. I know how to do it. I get it. I didn't get it at first, but look how far I've come. I didn't
Yeah.
get it. I was totally confused. I didn't get it 20 years ago. I was confused then, and then I'm trying to learn it now. I don't know it at first, but now I get it. Now
Mhm.
I know it. And then every time you have that experience, you develop more confidence.
Mhm.
So then you say, well, okay, well, what else can I figure out? But you got to accept, part of it is being able to accept the fact that you may not understand it at first, like how I was like very recently with these like composite inverse trig functions. But once I figured it out, I was like, oh, okay, so that's all you got to do. All right. Which is something I always love to hear from people when people say, oh, that's all you got to do.
Right.
That's how I know that they get it now,
Yeah.
because they've unlocked the code to it. Because everything in math has some type of like code to it. There's some type of
Mhm.
procedure, some type of algorithm, and there's a logic behind it, no matter
Mhm.
what it is, no matter what the topic is. And once you figure it out, then you're like, okay, I get it now. And now the thing is just to keep practicing,
Yeah,
or else you'll
definitely
forget.
keep practicing.
Keep practicing, or else you'll forget. And then you got to do a lot of examples with different numbers, different type of, you got to do some with tangent, you got to do some with cosine, you got to do some with
Inside.
cosecant, do some with
Mhm.
secant. Like, so you got to like, and that helps that reinforces it in your mind, and you gain even more understanding of it.
Yeah.
But but I want to stress the fact that um you know it's a great feeling when you understand it. It's gonna be frustrating at first.
Mhm.
It's even frustrating to me. But when you understand it, like that feeling is so much better or so much greater than the
Mhm.
feeling of frustration you experienced at first.
That is true. That's the thing. That's the wonderful thing about math. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can't give up. But you'll never get to that feeling if you give up. If you just say, well, this is hard, I ain't doing this. This I don't need
Yeah.
to know this anyway. I'm
And
gonna
that's what
just,
people do. That's what people do in math. They just give up right before they get the answer. They just give up. Because I seen kids do it. And I was just like, you was just right there, one step away.
yeah,
They were just so scared that the next step was going to be the wrong step. You know, they were
see that
scared.
too.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, yeah, the thing about math is it can be simple, but as you go up, like you said, trigonometry, things get more complex. And of course, if you're doing inverse, trig functions and things like that, and you said composite functions, it
Hmm.
gets really complicated. And just knowing how to do that, you just have to know other things that came before it. Because if you got a weak foundation on trig, you're gonna mess up inverse composite functions. You're gonna mess it up. So you got to have a strong foundation anyway. And like you said, when you go through it and you try to figure the problem out, and that's one thing I love about math. I love when it's a challenge. Math is a challenge. I love to be able to look at something and go through it and like, wait a minute, it's not working. Then go through it again, it's not working. And I can't really sleep unless it's fixed. And if I do go to sleep, I'm gonna have a dream and I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna have an answer the next day. It's like it's a puzzle. And it's like I just have the need to find the answer to that puzzle. And so for me, I like the challenge of math. Give me this problem. I'll do this problem. I'll go through, look at it, really detail orient, trying to figure out what's wrong, and I can always find somebody else what they did wrong, of course. But with me, I just had to maybe go through and do it a different method or check the answer and try to figure out where I went wrong. But it's just a challenge in it. And that's the beautiful thing about math. So if you want to become more comfortable with math, you have to be comfortable with getting uncomfortable, because math is about being uncomfortable. And sometimes you might get the wrong answer, but when you do get the right answer, like you said, woo,
Yeah,
when
it's a
you
good
go through
feeling.
that and you finally get it, it's like, and you want that feeling again. It takes you to a certain level and you kind of want that feeling again and you feel more comfortable. Well, okay, I made a mistake. That's okay. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to keep going. But you got to be able to make mistakes and you got to push through it till you get it right to get that feeling. And you'll always want that feeling. But like you said, some people never get to that feeling. Now, I just want to we're going to be wrapping it up soon, but what I wanted to say, when it comes to new teachers, giving new teachers advice. Now, what I would say giving new teacher advice in math, I would say, well, first of all, when you're a new teacher, you got to be organized. You got to have a plan. First of all, you got to come in there with a lesson plan. Even though you're going to deviate a little bit and you're going to change things, you got to understand where you're trying to go. And you might not know how you want to get there. You can probably leave that part open. You can say, well, I'm doing this and doing this and doing this. You don't have to have everything to the T, because as you get into the lesson, you might deviate and want to do this. You might deviate and want to do that. But you do have to have a plan. And I would say allow the kids to ask questions, even if they're uncomfortable for you, because in those questions, you're going to grow. So you're a new teacher. New teachers need to grow. You need to learn not just from yourself, you need to learn from the students. So I would just say, help the kids where they are, because the kids are going to be stuck, some of them in certain spots. And what you have to do is just ask guided questions, ask them questions to try to get them to push the thinking forward so that they can get the answer on their own without you saying, well, this one is this, and this is this. You ask some questions now. How does this look? Or what if this happened? And you get them to really think. And a lot of times the kids can develop the answer on their own. So sometimes you just got to sit back and just, like I said, watch it happen, because you're not teaching them. Math is more than just math. It's about critical thinking, it's about developing, and it's about understanding to a whole different level. There's a lot of things that go into it. It's not just about numbers, it's about the learning process. And so I would say, just be organized, go in there and just let happen. you know just be in a moment of the learning. this being a learn. If someone has a question, ask a question. If someone trying to develop something, you can help them develop it. Just be in the learning process. And it's not going to look the same all the time, but just be open that your lesson is not going to go 100% of what's on the paper, but the learning is still going to be, and it's not going to look the same for everybody, because this particular child that never asks a question on this day. And so you're so excited, you're developing him, and he wasn't even in the lesson plan that you thought of, but he changed the whole lesson, and everyone grew at that time. So what advice would you give to a new teacher?
I would say to be a student first.
Yes. Yes.
Definitely be a student.
Uh-huh.
Um, Create a what is it, a collegial and collective oriented learning environment where,
Mm-hmm.
like, let your students know, like, whereas you may know more math than they do, still let them know that, like, you're learning with them
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to facilitate their learning, and you're learning how to teach. Because, like I said, like, you may know a lot of math, you may have a math degree from undergrad or something,
Right.
but you learn how to teach, like, by teaching. It's like baptism by fire. Like, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, and even I think, and I teach in an education program, undergraduate program at Cheney, but you can't really teach. You could teach how to teach, and I tell my students a lot of things, and I've taught my students a lot of things over the years about pedagogy, but you got to put yourself in position and, like, be willing to be bad at it at first in order to
Mm-hmm.
get good,
Mm-hmm.
and implement some of those things that you've been taught by professors. You got to put them in play and, like, see how they really work out, because that's another thing I try to stress to students, to my education majors, my college students, that everything may not work for you, because a lot of things that I do are based on, like, when I teach, it's a very personal activity,
Mm-hmm.
and things that work for me may work because of my personality. They may work because of the personality of the students that happen to be in my room in that particular period on that particular day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it might not work for you. Some things work for me because I'm a black man, and I live in North Philly, and I grew up in Baltimore, and so I can say certain things in certain ways, and my students will understand it, but it might not work for you. Just like this other ways of teaching that might not work for me. But you got to try out the different methods. You got to try things out. You got to see what works, see what doesn't. You got to learn the different learning styles.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be able to teach to as many learning styles as possible, and get yourself a lot of opportunities to teach. So, sign up for programs, sign up for after school programs, Saturday programs, summer programs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, I know there's a lot of conversation about work-life balance, but at the same time, I think that's valuable. But I also think that there's some truth to that old adage that, if you do something that you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's true.
So if you really love teaching, just the aspect of, because really teaching is really like community building. It's really
Mm.
like a form of, like, um, just being a member of a community.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yep. A
passing on
member of the community.
information that on to young people,
Mm-hmm.
that they can benefit from, and hopefully that, they can then use, and, then they'll pass it on.
Mm-hmm.
So in many ways, like, I think that's why I've over the years I've taught so much. Like, I had to realize this one day, like, I've never had a summer off. I've
Mm.
never taken advantage of that. I've always been teaching. Now, early on, I mean, not to just to be honest and keep it a bean. Early on, it was because I was trying to get the money. I was trying to get to the money,
Yeah, that
because
summer money is good. Yeah.
yeah, because I realized, like, wait a minute, so y'all gonna pay me for 12 months, and then I don't got to come in for these 3 months. But then in these 3 months, I could work somewhere else and get a check.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that too. Okay, let's bring it, give it to me. I need all that, right? But what ended up happening is that I realized that I was developing my skill set. I was honing my craft, and I was learning. I was taking advantage of another opportunity to teach and to practice and to
Mm-hmm.
make mistakes and to get better. So, whether it was an upward bound program at one of the colleges at Temple or UPenn, whether it was like some other summer program, where I taught math. Um,
Mhm.
it's really, I can't stress enough like how beneficial it is
Yeah.
to just get those opportunities, get as many opportunities as possible, just to teach,
In different environments.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's all
Hmm.
about learning the learning styles. You learn the learning styles, you learn how students learn, you learn the mistakes.
Hmm.
Because that's the key. You learn the mistakes that the students will make typically,
Yeah.
and
The
you can incorporate
misconceptions.
those. Yeah, you can incorporate those, you can be proactive. You can incorporate those mistakes into your lesson plans,
Right. Right.
because if these students over here in West Philly often make this mistake, students over in South Philly are probably going to make the mistake too.
Yeah.
Well, students in another state are also making the same mistakes.
Hmm.
You take all that into consideration. And then when you're developing your lesson plans, you make it a point to focus in and zero in on those mistakes
Mm.
so as to prevent them from making them. And you explicitly discuss those mistakes.
Hmm.
So you'll remember it.
Yeah, you
It'll be
address
on
it.
the client to remember. Because that's something that happens like when you're early in teaching, you just like if you understand something, and this is something that I also realized early in my career, is that the more fundamental the math class is, the more difficult it is to teach it,
Mm.
because there's so much
Unless you
that you
unless you tutored at first. I was gonna
yeah,
say
so yeah,
tutoring. Tutoring is the key to being a great teacher too.
that will make a difference. Yeah, so I
Hmm.
didn't tutor at first. I went straight into I switched
Okay.
careers and went straight into well, I did a little bit of tutoring, but nothing extensive, nothing
Okay.
extensive. So what happens is
That's true.
there's so many things that you take for granted, when you get to a certain level of understanding in math. So
Hmm.
when you're like, it comes time to teach algebra one, you're like, and the student asks the question, well, why did you divide by 4 on both sides? And you're like, what do you mean, why did I divide by 4 on both sides? Why wouldn't I divide by 4 on both sides? That's just what you
Whoa.
do. That's just what you do. But not realizing that they don't know what you know.
They don't.
This is something you take for granted because you do it so much.
Yeah.
So that becomes the difference between being a teacher
Hmm.
and I guess being a person that just knows how to do math.
Exactly.
Because there's a lot of people that know how to do math that are in classrooms and that are teaching, but they're
Mm.
actually not teachers.
Right.
They're just adults that know how to do math,
Hmm.
and they haven't had enough experience to break things down step by step, and
Hmm.
they haven't learned what other people don't understand. Because
Right.
it's
That's
very
true.
that's the key. You got to be able to
Hmm.
learn what other people don't understand. Once you start to learn what other people don't understand,
That's what
then
that
you can
makes you best.
become
Hmm.
then you can become good. You can become a good teacher.
Right.
But otherwise, because we see this on the college level, this is like one of the issues with college. In
It
college,
is.
there's not a lot of teaching going on a lot of times,
At the community college, especially,
because you got people that just know math,
they just know
but not
math.
people that don't know how to, but not people that know how to teach math.
They don't know how to teach it.
So the students are
That's
sitting
true.
there, students are sitting there in class trying to copy everything down, and they don't even know what questions to ask. And then a lot of times, some of these professors, they get offended if you ask a question.
Right. You can't, not taking no questions, no questions. Text
Yeah.
me or email me, message, email me.
And I think the students get conditioned, college students get conditioned to be that, to not ask questions because of
Right.
those experiences. So I'm sitting in class and I'm at the board and I'm stopping. I'm like, y'all don't got no questions? Ask me a question. I gotta call somebody out. You ask me a
Right.
question.
Right. They conditioned. They're
Yeah,
very
you understand
conditioned.
this? Like I gotta start asking them questions. Like, where does three
Yeah.
come from? And they'll be
Right.
like, I don't know. Well, I'll be like, well, why you ain't ask me? You're supposed to ask me.
Because teachers embarrass them when they do ask questions.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
teachers embarrass them to the point where they like, you know what? I'm not asking no more questions in this class. Where the teacher should be, welcoming the questions and everything else, but the teacher stops it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And that's the crazy thing about it. Like I was gonna say, I did a post recently, well, not too long ago, about tutoring, how tutoring adds to the teaching experience. And so
Mm-hmm.
before I became a teacher, I was a tutor for years. So when it came to getting down to the fundamentals, I was like really good because when you tutor, you always had to be able to explain how this plus this or this plus you had to be able to be really creative and think of a way to teach this person because you're getting paid to teach this person. And so it's not like, oh, I can't do it. You're getting paid, so you automatically try to think of all the creative ways of doing it. And then when you bring that into teaching, it's like, whoa. When they ask you the question, you're like, okay, I did this when I was tutoring, and then you can take them down and then you can bring them back up. And so I always encourage teachers to tutor, even if it's volunteering tutoring, because the experience that you will get will really enrich your career. Because you're not on this level, you got to come, you automatically got to come down to this level as a tutor to bring the child up. And some teachers, they just stay here. They just stay here. I'm here. You got to reach me. Go to tutoring or go somewhere else. But tutoring allows you to go down and allows you to build a person up. That's what tutoring does. And so, as a teacher, if you're a tutor first, or if you're tutoring during your or if you're tutoring while you're teaching, that's still going to help you because you said the fundamentals can be the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Someone like, why is 1/2 times 2/3 this, that, and other? And they saying what you're saying, but they might be like, why really? Then you can just go ahead and bring out a grid, and then y'all can shade in 2/3 and 1/2,
Yeah.
and then they can see it in a grid. But everyone doesn't do
Right.
that. But when I was teaching elementary school, that's what I taught, and I was just like, whoa, that's how the fraction really look when you multiply them. You can put them on a grid paper, and then when they come across each other, you will see what the fraction is.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
but
And
when you
that's it.
teach them,
So and
go ahead.
that gives a conceptual understanding.
Right,
So
conceptual.
for a very long time in my career, so again, I changed careers, so I didn't have that like level of preparation. I didn't have as many I didn't have as much math coursework or pedagogy coursework early on.
Uh-huh.
Like I said, I learned it was like on the job training.
Okay.
So if you ask me what 1/2 times 2/3 was, I would just be like, well, because you multiply the numerators and you
Right.
multiply the
Multiple the
denominators.
denominators.
One
Right.
times two is two, two
Right.
times three is six.
Right.
And then you got to reduce the fractions. And then I show you how to do that. But that really doesn't answer the question though.
Right.
All you did was give an algorithm or get a procedure. That really doesn't tell me why 1/2 times 2/3 is 1/3.
Right. And
It
they
doesn't
can't
really
see
doesn't
it.
really
They couldn't
explain that.
see it. Right. They need to see it. And once
Yeah.
they can see it, and like I said, that was like a fifth grade skill at that time, I remember. But once they see how they cross each other and then the part that overlap is the answer, they can apply that. But the elementary school teachers get that. Sometimes when we go into teaching, we teaching at high school, but them elementary school teachers have all the strategies and things like that. And I didn't know those things until I taught like elementary, because on high school you had a certain level, but you
Yeah.
still got to go down to elementary school because some of those kids didn't get that, you know. And so the fundamentals are so important. And so if you, like you said, for new teachers, I would say focus on the fundamentals, actually understand where it's coming from, because you actually going to have to teach it anyway.
Yeah.
You're going to have to teach it. And like you said, learn, be a learner and things like that. And, don't be so stressed out. Go to a veteran teacher. You have teachers that have been there for 20, 30 years. You're trying to teach something, you're trying to make a lesson plan. You need to go over to that teacher and put your pride to the side and say, and they'd be happy to have you, they'd be like, oh, okay, they get excited. They give you some resources, some strategies. You'll be surprised what they can give you, because they've been sitting on top of stuff that they've been trying to give away for years, and you come and you get all the goodies,
Yeah.
so yeah, just take your time. You don't know everything. First year, you're not going to know everything. Even second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, you're still not going to know everything when it comes to teaching. And every situation will be different because every child is different. You're going to have children that challenge you, and then that's a classroom management. You got to learn about that because you can't learn all that in the books, because some things you're going to experience is not even going to be in the book, so so I would
Mhm.
just say, have good character, don't go back and forth with the kids, have good character
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
keep learning, because some teachers actually go down to the level with the kids and they like this with the children in an argument, you
Yeah.
know,
I used
try
to
to
do that.
Oh, you did?
I used to do that. Yeah, I used to do that.
But try to have
Yeah,
your composure. Try to have your composure. They try to take me there, but I didn't go. They try to take me there, but when I was on the board, I was like, these children getting on my last nerve. And I was at the board, they couldn't see my face, and I turned around and smiled. They could not get me. They probably like, Bobby can't get her, you know. But yeah, be a professional at all times. Get help, help, help. Always get help. Allow your kids to ask questions. Always be a learner. And this, just try to do the best that you can. If it's a culture that you really don't understand, there's some teachers that's coming into a new culture. Maybe they're coming into the Black community and they're from somewhere else. Try to learn about the culture, not so much from social media. Actually try to learn, the real history or whatever about the people that you're teaching, so you won't be so fearful and always have this prejudgment of who these kids are, because it's going to limit you to what you're going to teach them. Because if you already think mentally or emotionally or whatever they can't learn, then you only going to prepare your lesson to a certain level, and
yeah,
that's how it's going to be taught. You want to prepare your lesson to where as though it's you can prepare it, but there's room for growth. Not, we're going to stop here today. If someone have a question right here, no, we're not going to go there because my students are not there. We're going to stop here. So allow your lesson to have growth for the children that you have, because you'll be surprised. Those children are really smart, but if you don't give them a chance to express themselves and to let you see that if they know that you already thinking they don't care, they're gonna sit back and do it. Kids automatically gonna adjust to how the teacher is. So if the teacher come in, I know this and you don't know this, the kids gonna sit back like, okay, I don't know this then, and sit back and just be quiet. And that's how it's gonna be, because they blend into whatever is presented for them, you know. And so have high expectations, allow them to speak, ask questions, and just enjoy the process. It might be stressful. Our first year is stressful for a lot of teachers, right?
yeah. But I think it's different if you understand, if you have that expectation, like if you know that's par for the course. Like some people, they end up in stressful teaching situations and they think it's the end of the world. They think, oh, it's not supposed to be like this, but in certain situations, it's supposed to be like that.
And they quit.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of teachers were, they were people that they don't know how to fail. Like a lot of people don't know how to lose. They don't know how to lose.
That's
They don't know how to fail.
good. They don't know how to
So
fail. Wow. You're a teacher. You don't know how to fail. And you have
they
to know
just
how to
quit.
fail as being a teacher. That's the only way you can grow.
Yeah. So because of that, they just become overwhelmed by it, and they're like, "Nah, I can't do this because I don't know." Because you gotta, because if you know how to fail, you know how to bounce back.
Right.
But if you never failed and you never learn how to fail, then you don't know how to bounce back. So you don't even think you might not think you can bounce back. You might think
Hmm.
that this is just something that is insurmountable that you just can't do. Because you say, well,
Right.
if I could do it, I wouldn't have failed at it. But a lot of times, like you got to fail. You got to fail
Yeah.
in order to be able to do it.
Right.
So you gotta but that's something, that and that's something as a teacher you can instill in children. You can teach children how to fail,
Mm.
and bounce back from failure.
Hmm.
Because there are a lot of adults that they behave in certain ways because they never, like even in sports, like they never learned how to lose. Like they were always on the winning team. So then when
Mm.
the moment they got into a situation where they lost or they won a losing team, they don't know how to act.
They
They
don't.
want to fight after the game because they don't know how to lose.
They don't know how to lose.
You know how to lose. You got to learn how to lose.
Yeah.
Just like
And
you gotta learn how to fail.
right. And it's like it's not like failing all the way. It's just maybe it's just making a mistake. So it's not like failing all the way. It's just that the process that you're going through, you're making mistakes and you feel like you're failing, but you got to push through so it won't absolutely be a failure. It's not a failure until the very end and you totally give up. You haven't failed until you totally get up. You can still be in the process. I'm not getting this. I'm not getting this, but I'm not going to let this get the best of me. You can be like that. But once you just totally give up, you totally fail. And so there's still room not to be a failure, you know, but you just have to, and you just have to realize, teachers have to realize it's not about them, it's about the students. It's not about what you know, it's about what you can get the students to know. It's not about you. It's about what you can do to help the students to grow. And then once they can realize that, which takes a lot, like you said, the ego,
Yeah.
Once they can
A
build up.
balanced ego. We gotta have a balanced ego.
Right,
Ego gotta be
right,
balanced.
right. And you got to be quiet sometimes and let the students talk. You know, you gotta be quiet. During my observation as a teacher, I really did any talking. I let the students actually teach my lesson, but I would sit back and walk around and let them know how good of a teacher I am. I let a sixth grader, this one particular sixth grader, she had like the worst behavior, but she was like aggressive, really strong willed, everything else. So I knew the students would listen to her. She was really smart and everything else. And so every day I would let the kids take control of the drill, the lesson plan, and everything else. I would sit back and let them lead and everything else. And so for my observation, they were already used to it. The principal came in, the principal saw the student, the principal knew the student's behavior because the student been in the office I don't know how many times. The principal sat back, that student went up there, did the drill, the objective, called people, everything else. And she did her part, and then I might have intervened here and there. I just facilitated walking around. The principal was so impressed because she saw someone that normally would get in trouble take over the whole lesson while I walked around. And to me, observation is showing them what your students can do. It's not about me talking through my lesson. It's to show you, that let you see what I can do with my students and how they can do it back. And so I had to sit back, and I always let my students run the show during my observation because I was like, they already got it. I already entrusted them in the power of them being able to do things without me talking through it. Because some of the kids had real bad behavior. Me sitting up there talking wouldn't be doing so much. They're
Right.
probably like, oh, they probably like this. And they was very active. Sixth graders are very active, So I had them doing all different type of things like that. But that takes control. That takes a whole different level of allowing your students to have power, so I don't know if every teacher is there or every teacher is willing to let a sixth grader take over the whole lesson while they're being observed by the principal. That's a whole different level of control.
It
But
is.
it's a whole different level. But I really entrusted in my students because I know what I put in them, and I put structure in them. And no matter if the child was the best or the child had like the behavior wasn't the best, because she had leadership skills. Because that one particular girl that got in trouble had leadership skills and she was smart, I was willing to let her go ahead and do it. And she just did not sit back and look. And she was happy too. She didn't even know. They just thought a regular lesson was going on because you ain't saying, I'm going to get observed. You don't tell the kids that. So they just go and do everything they normally do without any tension. And I just sit back like, this is my observation. They don't even know it. And so, yeah, new teachers just go in and take out advice and do what you need to do. Now, Professor Parker, do you have any final thoughts for the people out there? Do you have any final things you want to say?
Subscribe to my YouTube channel and use it.
I know
Don't
that's
just
right.
subscribe to it. Don't just add it, have it be another subscription on YouTube. Use it, tell people about it. If you're a teacher, you can use it for your students. If you're a teacher and you want some tips or some advice on how to teach certain topics, how to teach certain lessons, you can use mine. I've learned over the years how to teach a lot of different topics. So this is my way of passing it on to you, especially if you're a new teacher or even if you're a veteran teacher. I learn about new things every day. I've been teaching 17 years, 18 years. And I still learn new methods of teaching things. And and also let parents know about it. And if you're a parent watching this, I want you to use the YouTube channel, and I want you to finally be able to get over your fear and discomfort with math, your math phobia, your math anxiety. And one of the things that I do in the channel, and it just is kind of organic, it really wasn't planned, but it's just part of my teaching style, is when I'm teaching somebody something, I make them feel, because feelings are important. I make them feel that they're supposed to be learning it. And I make them feel, because I know we've all been in classrooms where the teacher either intentionally or just passively did not make us feel like we belong there. Or they did not make us feel that we were supposed to be learning this, or they could care less whether we learned it or not. So the way I attempt to explain things in my video content is just the way I do when I teach in person, is that I want to communicate to you and make you feel that you're supposed to be learning this, and that you are equipped and that you are qualified to learn this.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's what a lot of parents, when they had negative experiences in math classrooms, they didn't get that feeling. So if you listen to me talk and tell the videos, I'm talking to you in a way where I'm letting you know that you can do this. You can learn it. And I'm going to try to make it make sense for you. And I try to explain every step. And I also show the relevancy of it. And I'm also giving you tips on how you can, like, explain it to your own children, nieces, nephews, little cousins, grandchildren, whoever, you know? So there's that. And also, like, I want the All This Math YouTube channel to be a household name in our community.
Mm.
So I want for us to believe and understand that even if you don't understand the math, because this is basically what happens. A lot of people go to school, a lot of people sit in math class, and they either get it or they don't.
Mhm.
And for the people that don't get it, it just ends right there. Once they don't get it in class, they just accept the fact and reserve themselves to accepting the fact that they will never get it because
Mm.
there's no other resource.
Wow.
Even though there are a lot of resources online, but a lot of those resources are not culturally relevant. Some of them are not the content is not as good. Some of it is made for people that already have a very strong math background, which a lot of people do not.
Mhm.
So I want for this channel to be not a crutch, but a tool, like a calculator. Calculator shouldn't be a crutch. It should be a tool.
Mhm.
But the channel should be a tool that you can use where if you don't understand in class and you want another perspective or another explanation, you can go to my channel. Even if you do understand in class, you might still want another explanation. You can go to my channel. So I want our entire community to take advantage of this and use this so that math will stop being an accepted deficiency. Like we talked
Mm.
about that earlier. I see math as like an accepted deficiency, whereas literacy is not an accepted deficiency, even though I'm convinced a lot of people still can't read and are functionally illiterate, but you don't brag about it.
Right.
I couldn't
Right.
read, they don't
Right.
brag about not knowing how to read. People brag about not knowing math.
Right.
It's
Right. They
kind
do
of,
brag.
yeah, I understand. Like it's a weird flex. It's kind of a weird flex, but I understand where it comes from though. It's like trauma bonding.
Mhm.
Um, because we feel that math is just like, for some people believe that it's insurmountable, like you
Mhm.
you can't learn it or you had to be born a certain way to learn it,
Mhm.
and that's not true. But again, there are forces at play that are much greater and stronger than any of us as individuals. There are people that control the society that benefit from our mathematical ignorance, because due to our mathematical ignorance, we then lack critical thinking ability, we lack problem
Mm.
solving ability, and we're not even in a position to challenge authority in appropriate ways because we don't even know what questions that we should be asking.
We
So
don't
we
know the
just accept
question.
everything that we're given.
Right.
And there's a direct link to your ability to question authority and ask the right questions, and mathematical proficiency.
Mm.
And another thing that's really beautiful about mathematics is that it while it can do that, what I just mentioned, it also can teach you how to follow rules.
Mhm.
Like, formulas are just rules. Procedures are just rules. The order of operations is a set of rules.
Mhm.
It teaches you discipline. It teaches you how to solve a problem by using a set of rules. But so some people, if they hear that, then they would say, oh, well, oh, math just teaches you how to be a slave. And it's not that, because while it teaches you how to follow rules, it also teaches you how to be perceptive enough and how to be thoughtful enough to understand when a rule is inappropriate.
Mm. Okay.
So you learn how to follow rules, you practice following rules, but at the same time, you're able to question the validity of certain rules that somebody else or some entity or some person or some group may put forth in front of you. And you're able to, and you have like a system, a bona fide system that you can apply and say, well, does this rule make sense? And is this rule actually going to benefit me?
Mhm.
Or should we not follow this rule? Just
Mm.
like, you know, today's April 4th, 1968. This is the anniversary of Dr. King's assassination. No, it's not 68, it's 2023. But Dr. King was assassinated
Right.
in 1968.
Right. I
This is the
understand.
anniversary of it. And one of the things that Dr. King talked about was just and unjust rules.
Mm.
And he talked about our moral obligation to defy rules that were unjust.
Mm.
But you have to be able to go through that process of assessment to tell whether this rule is just or not. You have to be able to judge the rule. So we should know how to follow rules, because rules are important in order for there to be order and organization within society and within groups. But you also should not just be like, well, I gotta always follow the rules, because some rules should not be followed. Because sometimes you have people that are evil and oppressive, that are in control and have the power to make the rules for everybody else. So you
Mhm.
have to be able to say, okay, well, no, this is an unjust rule. So we shouldn't actually follow this rule, or we should take steps to try to change this rule. And I think that math, by learning how to follow rules within mathematics, it will also enable you to be able to test rules out, and test the scrutiny of rules and see if the rules actually make sense.
Mhm.
Because in math, um, the rules make sense because they help you to arrive at a certain conclusion and a certain
Mhm.
solution and an answer. But if the rule didn't make sense, then we wouldn't arrive at that answer. So
Mm-mm.
that's like um, when you think you may recognize a new pattern and say, okay, well, we can do it this way, but then you realize that no, that actually doesn't give you the correct answer, because it doesn't work in every situation.
Mhm.
So that's another thing that's important about mathematics, and all of these are just like,
Mhm.
again, like, so a lot of answers to the question students ask, which is, when am I going to use this stuff? Or like, what do I need to know this for? I was reading a book yesterday um, about charter schools, and it was a critique of charter schools, and they are worthy of critique. They're not perfect.
Yeah, I know.
And they were talking about the marketing of certain charter schools around the country, and how some of them will claim that they have 100% graduation rate,
Mm.
which I guess in theory is maybe true, but then you wonder, like, well, okay, well, but it leaves out the date. But then when you understand statistics, and you understand statistics conceptually, then what happens is you start to think about other things. Like, so are you trying to tell me that in this particular high school, if there's 100% graduation rate, out of all the students that enrolled as freshmen, they matriculated all the way to 12th grade, and every
Mm-mm.
single one of them graduated?
No, not the freshmen.
A
They
lot
drop
of what
off. They drop off, becomes like a pyramid.
Exactly. Exactly. And the public schools, the traditional public schools, don't have that ability to kind of cream their population, right? Kick people out for like minor infractions, things of that
Mhm.
nature. So it's easy to like have data, to produce data like that, which is really misleading, actually. But so many people in the public, they don't even know that they're being misled, because they don't have that mathematical foundation.
Yeah,
So
they
when you
don't know about that.
say, why do I need to know this? It's so when you become a parent and you become an adult, and you're trying to choose, where should I send my child to school, and then you're minding your business, and you see this bus go by, this public bus go by with a big advertisement on the side for this local charter school that boasts of having 100% graduation rate. And so you'll at least ask the question, well, 100% graduation rate, does that mean that every student that's enrolled as a ninth grader will
Mm.
matriculate through and then graduate, and every will graduate after at 12th grade? Or are they leaving out the fact that maybe 60 to 65% of those ninth graders that originally were there
Mhm.
got kicked out or dropped out or failed out?
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, again, back to my point about, when you have math skills and math ability, you can ask the right questions.
Mhm.
But so many of us can't ask the right questions. And
Yeah,
that's
we
the
don't have
thing that's
kids.
left out, when, that's the thing that young people don't understand when they sit in class and they frustrated, and they just saying, why I gotta know this for? You gotta know it so that you won't be taken advantage of.
Right.
And the thing is, you as that parent that saw that advertisement on the side of that bus, you might still send your child to that school, but at least you'll have more of an awareness that, okay, well, what they're saying is like, that's a little bit of cap, basically,
Mm.
because they're being disingenuous. They're
Mhm.
misrepresenting themselves,
Mhm.
right? But you have to understand math in order to know that they're misrepresenting themselves.
Right.
So
Right.
you won't go in there with any illusions that, okay, well, this 100% graduation rate, I don't know. I don't know about all that, but there are some things that I may appreciate about this institution. So
Hmm.
for these other reasons, this is why I'm a send. But you're not the one that's going there like, oh, my child graduate guaranteed to graduate. Everybody in the school graduates. Everybody in the school is just a genius, and everybody's getting 4.0s and all of this, all this type of stuff. Um, like there's a local school here in Philadelphia that boasts of 100% graduation. But um, there are also some interesting things about that school. I think the lowest grades you can get, at least this used to be the case, is 80%. The teachers aren't
Hmm.
allowed to give grades less than 80. But nobody talks about that though.
Wow, the teachers aren't allowed.
No, they're not allowed to give less than an 80.
Everybody
Um,
passing.
yeah, so you gotta give retakes and you gotta do other certain things. But again, these are all the different things that you start to unpack
Hmm.
when you're able to do analysis.
Right.
Being able to do that type of analysis and even think that way comes about from having a mathematical mindset.
Hmm.
But
I can
but
see
as
that.
soon as we accept the fact that, well, I'm not a math person, or I don't understand math, or math is too hard, you just lock yourself out from being
Right.
the type of person that can even ask those questions. And then when somebody comes to you with some marketing or some advertisement or some propaganda or some statement about saying how great something is, and they put a number in there or a
Right.
percentage in there, then you have no choice but to just believe it and just
Right.
accept it.
Hmm.
And
Right.
this
You
happens
know.
all the time. And people just get taken advantage of left and right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
And then
true.
the people, it's like Asada Shakur said, like nobody's gonna educate you into no oppressive person or group is gonna educate you into taking away their power. And that's the power that these people have over you, is that you can't say nothing because you don't know math.
Mm-mm.
You can't speak up for yourself because you don't know math.
You can't.
So once you know math, then you can at least speak up for yourself. And then you can at least see what's going on. So you won't, so then it won't be like I'm the only person in the room looking around at everybody else. Like, did y'all not hear what he just said? Did y'all not just hear what he just said?
Nope, they didn't hear it.
Why are y'all clapping? Like why are y'all clapping? Why are y'all happy? What's going on? But I have to realize, like, okay, I'm looking at this mathematically. I know how this movie ends. I
Hmm.
know what's about to happen, but they can say this to these people because they
Hmm.
have the confidence that people don't have a strong math background and don't
Right.
understand math. So that's how they're able to take advantage of people.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I definitely everything you said that was very, very powerful. Everything that you said, um, I'm just gonna add pretty much, when you're doing math, try to have fun with math. You're going to make mistakes. You have an eraser for your mistakes. If you keep trying, you'll get the right answer. But if you're doing the wrong procedure, you might not. So you need to learn and make sure you're doing the problem the right way, because it could be something small that you're missing. And then sometimes in class, teachers skip steps. And so that one step that they skip could be the one thing that you needed to connect the two math together. And so it's not necessarily your fault. It's just that the teacher assumed that you knew something and skipped it. And that was like the one piece that you really needed to know. So it's good to go to YouTube videos and go to the channel, Professor Parker's channel. It's good to just go and learn, go through the videos and just be patient with yourself when it comes to math. Be patient with your children. Know that math is bigger than math. It's about critical thinking skills. It's about, knowing your rights. And, it's just about understanding. So know that math is bigger than yourself. So give it a try, and use all the resources that we spoke about, because there's resources out there and there's people that specialize in this type of learning. So reach out to us and let us know if we could do something to help. But I want to thank you, Professor Parker, for all your educational math dialogue and historical analysis and
Yeah.
your quotes and and everything else. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing with everyone. And I just hope that everyone take the advice that you have given them. This is just a deeper look into math that people normally don't see. You know, we're two people that love math, and we're giving you the inside part from a classroom tutor, and other professionals. We've been in different aspect of mathematics, doing this, whether it's in the field, in the classroom, outside the classroom. We have our own businesses. So we see math on a deeper level. So when we tell you stuff, when we give you information, please take heed to what we're telling you. And we're telling you from a love standpoint.
Yeah,
We're trying to bring you up. We're giving you love. You're not going to hear this type of love. And Professor Parker already told you what the plan was.
yeah,
He already lined out the plan for you. So if you're wondering why is this, he already lined it out for you. He gave you the backstory, the historical relevance, and everything else, but the quotes and everything added on to it. So just take heed to what we said. We're giving you this from a love standpoint. Historically, everything that you're going through when it comes to math, how to teach math, and everything. We're giving you everything that we can, give you, and we just want you to take heed to it, because we are here to help you, and the resources that we are giving to you are here. So please take advantage of it. Okay, Professor Parker, thank you so much for coming on, and this is it.
thank
Peace.
you.
Okay.